Jack Harrison never liked coming back to his childhood home. The small two-story house in the suburbs of Ohio felt smaller each time he visited. At 32 years old, he had outgrown not just the twin bed in his old room, but the entire life his parents had built here. Mom wants everything cleared out by next weekend, his sister Diane reminded him over the phone. They're finally downsizing to that condo in Florida. Jack sighed as he looked around his old bedroom. Posters of space and science fiction movies still clung to the walls. Shelves lined with books, old trophies, and various toys collected dust in the corners. 20 years had passed since he'd actually lived here, yet somehow his parents had kept this room frozen in time. It's like a museum to my awkward teenage years, Jack muttered to himself as he began filling cardboard boxes. The morning passed, slowly. Jack sorted through piles of old clothes, school notebooks, and forgotten treasures from his youth. Most items went straight into garbage bags. A few nostalgic pieces made it into the keep box. By late afternoon, sweat dripped down his back as he pulled out the final storage container from under his bed. This box was different. It contained his most prized childhood possessions, his first telescope, a rock collection, and various science fiction memorabilia. As Jack dug through the items, his fingers touched something smooth and cool. He pulled out a strange figurine he had almost completely forgotten about. "Well, hello there," Jack said, turning the object in his hands. The figurine stood about 6 inches tall with blue skin that still shimmered faintly despite years in storage. It had 4 arms, each incredibly detailed down to tiny fingers. Its large oval head featured expressive eyes that seemed to catch the light at odd angles. Jack couldn't remember where he'd gotten it. A birthday gift? A prize from a science fair? The memory escaped him. "You were my favorite," he recalled vaguely, running his finger along the smooth surface. "I used to pretend you were a real alien scientist who would teach me about the stars." As Jack placed the figurine into his keep box, his thumb accidentally pressed against a small indentation on its back. A faint click sounded and Jack froze. The figurine's eyes began to glow with a soft blue light, and a gentle humming noise filled the room. "What the—" Jack dropped the figurine back into the box. The glow faded immediately. He cautiously picked it up again, examining it more carefully. There was definitely a small panel on its back that he'd never noticed before, but pressing it again did nothing. "Weird," Jack said, placing the figurine carefully in his keep box. Battery must have finally died. That evening, Jack returned to his apartment in the city with his boxes of childhood memories. His apartment was small but modern, with large windows overlooking the city lights. After ordering takeout and eating while watching the news, Jack finally unpacked a few items from his childhood room. He placed the blue alien figurine on his nightstand, smiling at the memory of his childhood imagination. "Good night, little guy," he said jokingly, before turning off the light. Jack woke suddenly in the dark. The digital clock on his nightstand showed 3:17 a.m. Something had disturbed his sleep, but he couldn't identify what. Then he heard it, a faint scratching sound coming from beside his bed. He turned slowly, reaching for his phone to use as a light. In the dim glow from the city lights through his window, he saw movement on his nightstand. The alien figurine was standing upright, appearing to examine its surroundings. Jack blinked hard, certain he was dreaming. The figurine turned, seeming to notice his movement. For a long moment, they stared at each other in silence. Then, to Jack's complete shock, the figurine moved its 4 arms in a deliberate gesture and spoke. "After 25 years of hibernation, I am finally awake," it said in perfect, though quietly accented English. "My name is Zix Toril, nuclear physicist of the Centaurian Science Academy. Your world is in grave danger." Jack sat bolt upright, scrambling back against his headboard. "This is not happening," he whispered, rubbing his eyes hard. "I understand your disbelief," the small figure continued. Its mouth moved in perfect sync with the words, and its large eyes blinked thoughtfully. "You were just a child when I entered emergency stasis mode. I did not expect to be dormant for so long." Jack reached slowly for the lamp beside his bed and turned it on. In the warm light, he could see the figurine, Zix Toril, even more clearly. Its blue skin had a metallic quality that shifted subtly as it moved. The forearms were articulated, with incredible precision as it gestured while speaking. You were my toy, Jack managed to say. I played with you. You never moved or talked before. I was not a toy, Zixtoril corrected gently. I was in a protective stasis shell after the crash. My life functions were minimized to survive until rescue could arrive. Crash? What crash? Jack felt dizzy. This had to be a dream or a hallucination. Our scientific vessel crashed 25 years ago, Zix explained. I was the only survivor of our delegation. The emergency protocols activated my stasis mode. You found me, and your bioelectric signature registered as non-threatening. My shell disguised me as what you would consider a toy for protection. Jack stared at the small alien, his mind racing to process what he was hearing. If you're real, why wake up now? Why not years ago? Zixtoril moved closer, its steps careful on the smooth surface of the nightstand. The stasis protocol had a built-in timer, but more importantly, the danger we came to warn your species about has accelerated. The radiation wave from the Proxima Centauri event will reach your solar system much sooner than our original calculations predicted. Radiation wave? Jack repeated. His background in structural engineering hadn't prepared him for astrophysical threats or conversations with aliens that used to be his toys. A supernova event in a neighboring star system has created a radiation wave that could sterilize Earth's atmosphere, if not properly shielded against, Zixtoril explained. My team was sent to warn humanity and provide technological assistance. Jack ran his hands through his hair in disbelief. And I've been keeping the alien ambassador sent to save Earth on my shelf as a decoration for 25 years? Not ambassador, nuclear physicist, Zixtoril corrected. And I require your assistance now. The radiation shield technology must be implemented immediately. We have very little time remaining. Jack laughed nervously, the sound hollow in his quiet apartment. You want my help? I build office buildings, not radiation shields. You were kind to me as a child, Zixtoril said simply. The hibernation matrix formed a connection. I have access to the knowledge that can save your world. But I need someone to help me navigate human society. I need someone who will believe me. Jack stared at the small alien, remembering how he used to carry the figurine everywhere as a child, telling it his secrets and dreams. Now it stood before him, alive and intelligent, saying the world was in danger. This is insane, Jack whispered. Perhaps, Zixtoril agreed. But it is also true. Will you help me, Jack Harrison? The fate of your planet may depend on it. Jack looked at the clock. It was 3:24 a.m. and somehow he knew his life would never be the same again. Jack didn't sleep for the rest of the night. How could he? A 6-inch alien that used to be his childhood toy was now walking around his apartment, examining everything with curious eyes. Your technology has advanced significantly since I entered stasis, Zixtoril said, studying Jack's laptop with all 4 hands touching the screen. Though not as much as I would have expected in 25 years. Jack poured his 3rd cup of coffee as morning light filtered through his windows. I still can't believe this is happening, he muttered. Maybe I should see a doctor. Your mental health appears sound, Zix responded without looking up, though your caffeine consumption is concerning. Jack sat down across from the small blue alien. Prove it, he said suddenly. Prove you're really a nuclear physicist from another planet. Zixtoril looked up from the laptop. Hand me a piece of paper and something to write with. Jack found a notepad and pen. He watched as the alien used all 4 arms to write complex equations and diagrams at incredible speed. Within minutes, the page was filled with symbols Jack barely understood. This is the basic principle behind your nuclear fission reactors, Zix explained, but with modifications that would increase efficiency by approximately 340% while eliminating radioactive waste. Jack stared at the notepad. His engineering background was enough to recognize that the equations were far beyond current scientific understanding. This is impossible. No, merely unknown to your species yet, Zix corrected. I require access to proper scientific equipment to begin work on the radiation shield. Do you know any scientists? Jack ran his hand through his hair. My neighbor Olivia is studying astrophysics at the university, but I can't just introduce her to an alien. The radiation wave will reach Earth in approximately 78 days, Zix said calmly. We need assistance. Jack paced his small apartment, trying to think. How do I know this radiation threat is even real? Zix pointed one of his small blue fingers toward Jack's laptop. Check your astronomical news sources. Your scientists may have already detected unusual radiation patterns. With shaking hands, Jack opened his browser and searched for recent astronomy news. The third result made his heart skip a beat. Unusual radiation spike detected by space telescope, scientists puzzled. That could be a coincidence, Jack said weakly. It is not, Zix replied. That is merely the precursor wave. The main event follows. Jack closed his laptop and took a deep breath. If I help you, what exactly would we need to do? We must create a prototype detector to confirm my calculations about the wave's arrival time and intensity. Then we must modify your nuclear power, facilities to create a shield. I have the knowledge, but I need human assistance to implement it. Jack looked at the small alien. And why me? Why not go directly to NASA or something? I would be captured and dissected before delivering my warning, Zix said matter-of-factly. You were kind to me when I was helpless. My stasis shell selected you as trustworthy. A knock at the door made both of them freeze. Jack, are you home? A woman's voice called through the door. It's Olivia, Jack whispered, quickly picking up Zix and looking for a hiding place. Perfect timing, Zix said. We need her scientific expertise. Are you crazy? I can't just… Jack, I can hear you, talking in there. I brought back your drill like I promised. The doorknob turned. In a panic, Jack placed Zix on a bookshelf and hissed, Don't move! Olivia Murphy stood in the doorway, a power drill in her hand. She was about Jack's age, with curly brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and glasses, perched on her nose. Were you talking to someone? She asked, looking around the apartment. Just myself, Jack said too quickly. Working through a problem. Olivia handed him the drill. Thanks for letting me borrow this. My shelves are finally up. She frowned, looking at Jack more closely. Are you okay? You look like you haven't slept. Jack opened his mouth to respond when Zix Toral's voice came from behind him. He has not slept. We have been discussing the imminent radiation threat to your planet. Olivia's eyes widened as she looked past Jack to the bookshelf. What was that? Did you get a parrot or something? Jack closed his eyes briefly. Olivia, please don't freak out. I am Zix Toral, nuclear physicist from the Centaurian Science Academy, the small alien said, stepping forward on the shelf so Olivia could see him clearly. Your planet faces destruction in 78 days without proper shielding. Olivia's face went pale. She staggered backward, bumping into the doorframe. What is that thing? She whispered. Remember the blue alien figure I had on my nightstand? When you helped me move in? Jack asked. Turns out it wasn't a toy. Olivia stared at Zix for a long moment. Then she did something Jack didn't expect. She stepped forward, adjusted her glasses, and peered closely at the alien. This is incredible, she said, her scientific curiosity overpowering her fear. A non-Earth life form with apparent intelligence and speech capability. I need your scientific background to save your planet, Zix said simply. Olivia looked at Jack. Is this some kind of elaborate prank? Did you build this robot? I wish, Jack replied honestly. He woke up last night and has been talking about radiation waves ever since. Olivia reached out a tentative finger toward Zix, who grasped it with one of his four hands in a miniature handshake. You're warm, she said in wonder, and your grip is strong. My species evolved on a planet with higher gravity than Earth, Zix explained. May I show you my calculations regarding the approaching radiation wave? 20 minutes later, Olivia sat at Jack's kitchen table, poring over pages of equations that Zix had written. Her face grew increasingly serious as she worked through them. The physics is like nothing I've ever seen, she admitted. But the underlying principles, they're sound. If these calculations are correct, there's a massive radiation wave heading toward our solar system. Can we actually build something to detect it? Jack asked. Olivia bit her lip. Maybe. The physics department has some equipment that might work if we modified it, but we'd need access after hours and materials. I can provide a list of necessary components, Zix offered. Many can be found in common Earth devices. This is crazy, Jack said, rubbing his tired eyes. Yesterday I was a normal structural engineer clearing out my childhood bedroom. Today I'm plotting with an alien and my neighbor to save the world. If the wave hits Earth without protection, your atmosphere will be stripped away and all surface life will perish, Zix stated plainly. We must act quickly. Olivia looked up from the equations. The university lab has a particle detector we could modify. I have a keycard, but using it after hours would break about a dozen rules. And harboring an alien probably breaks a few laws too, Jack added with a hollow laugh. So are we doing this? Olivia asked, looking between Jack and the small blue alien. Jack met her gaze, seeing both fear and determination in her eyes. He thought about his comfortable life, his job designing office buildings, his plans for the weekend. All of it seemed suddenly small and insignificant compared to what Zix was telling them. I guess we are, he finally answered. What's the first step in building a radiation detector? Zix Toral's large eyes seemed to shine brighter. First, we will need copper wire, a microprocessor from one of your phones, and access to your university laboratory. As Olivia began making a list of materials, Jack wondered what he had gotten himself into. But deep down, he knew he had no choice. If there was even a chance that Zix was telling the truth, they had to try to save the world. The university physics building was dark and quiet at 11:30 p.m. Jack stood nervously beside Olivia as she swiped her keycard at the side entrance. Zix Toral was hidden in Jack's backpack, with just enough opening at the top for the small alien to see out. Are you sure about this? Jack whispered as the door clicked open. We could get arrested for trespassing. If what Zix says is true, getting arrested is the least of our problems, Olivia replied, leading the way inside. Lab 3 has the equipment we need. It's on the second floor. They moved quietly through the empty hallways. Jack's heart pounded with each step. The backpack shifted slightly as Zix moved inside it. Left at the next corridor, Olivia instructed. The lab should be. A beam of light cut through the darkness ahead of them. Jack pulled Olivia into a doorway as a security guard walked past, shining his flashlight along the walls. Night check, the guard mumbled into his radio. Second floor is clear. They waited until his footsteps faded before continuing. Finally, they reached a door marked Advanced Physics Laboratory 3. Olivia's keycard worked again and they slipped inside. We need to be quick, she said, turning on only a single desk lamp instead of the main lights. Security makes rounds. Every 30 minutes. Jack carefully opened his backpack and Zix climbed out onto the lab table. The alien looked around with obvious interest. Primitive but workable, he commented, examining the equipment. We need the particle detector and spectral analyzer. Olivia pointed to a large machine in the corner. That's the particle detector, but it's designed for teaching demonstrations. I'm not sure if it's sensitive enough for what you need. I can modify it, Zix said confidently. Please gather these components. He handed Olivia a list written in surprisingly neat handwriting. For the next 20 minutes, Jack watched in amazement as Zix directed them to disassemble various pieces of lab equipment. The small alien worked with incredible speed, all four hands moving independently as he rebuilt the particle detector with new configurations. This is beyond anything I've studied, Olivia admitted, her voice filled with wonder as she handed Zix tools and components. The way you're rerouting the detection field is revolutionary. On my world, this would be considered elementary school science, Zix replied without looking up from his work. Almost finished. Jack glanced nervously at his watch. The guard will be back soon. We need to hurry. Just as Zix connected the final wire, they heard footsteps in the hallway outside. The three of them froze. Quick, turn everything off, Jack whispered urgently. Olivia switched off the desk lamp while Jack scooped up Zix and the modified detector, which was now about the size of a toaster. They huddled in the darkest corner of the lab as the door opened and a flashlight beam swept across the room. "Is someone in here?" the security guard called out. Jack held his breath. The guard took a few steps into the lab, his flashlight moving methodically across the tables and equipment. Suddenly, a loud alarm sounded from another part of the building. The guard's radio crackled to life. "All security personnel to the west entrance, possible break-in at the chemistry lab," a voice announced. The guard hesitated, then hurried out of the physics lab. Jack let out a relieved breath. "That was close," he whispered. "What was that alarm?" "I created a small electromagnetic pulse to trigger the alarm system in another section," Zix explained from Jack's arms. "It seemed the most efficient distraction." "You can do that?" Jack asked, surprised. "Species has natural bioelectric capabilities," Zix said simply. "We should leave now." They carefully made their way back through the building and out to Olivia's car. Once safely away from the university, Jack finally relaxed. "So what exactly does this detector do?" he asked, looking at the modified device on his lap. "It will confirm the approaching radiation wave's existence and give us precise measurements of its speed and intensity," Zix explained. "We need to take it somewhere with minimal electronic interference. My parents have a cabin about 2 hours from here," Olivia offered. "It's pretty isolated in the mountains. Would that work?" "That would be suitable," Zix agreed. The drive to Olivia's parents' cabin took them up winding mountain roads. By the time they arrived, it was nearly 3 a.m. The cabin was small but comfortable, with a wide porch that offered a clear view of the night sky. "We should set up outside," Zix instructed as Olivia unlocked the cabin door. They placed the detector on the porch railing and connected it to a laptop Olivia had brought. Zix made some final adjustments, then activated the device. Strange symbols and numbers began filling the laptop screen. "What are we looking at?" Jack asked, struggling to stay awake after the long, stressful night. "The detector is scanning for specific radiation patterns," Zix explained. "If my calculations are correct, we should see—" He paused as the screen suddenly changed. "There." Olivia leaned forward, studying the data. "These readings are off the charts," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've never seen anything like this." "It is as I feared," Zix said gravely. "The radiation wave is approaching faster than I originally calculated. We have less than 60 days before it reaches Earth." "60 days?" Jack repeated. "But you said 78 before." "The wave appears to be accelerating due to interaction with your solar system's magnetic field," Zix replied. "This is worse than I anticipated." "What exactly will happen when this wave hits?" Olivia asked. "Without protection, the radiation will strip away most of your atmosphere. Surface temperatures will rise rapidly. All exposed life forms will perish. Within hours," Zix explained with clinical detachment, "your species will become extinct." Jack sat heavily on the porch steps. "And you can stop this? One small alien against a cosmic radiation wave?" "Not alone," Zix said. "But with human assistance, yes. My people developed shielding technology centuries ago. We need to adapt it to work with Earth's existing nuclear facilities." "You're talking about modifying nuclear power plants?" Olivia asked, her eyes wide. "That's impossible. The security, the regulations—" "We have no choice," Zix replied. "The detector confirms my fears. We must act immediately." As the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon, Jack stared at the small blue alien who had once been his childhood toy. Just days ago, his biggest worry had been clearing out his old bedroom. Now he was part of a desperate plan to save humanity from extinction. "We need help," Jack said finally. "We can't do this alone. Who can we trust with this?" "My professor might believe us if I show him this data," Olivia suggested. "Alan Craig, he's brilliant and open-minded." "The more humans who know about me, the greater the risk," Zix warned. "We don't have a choice," Jack replied. "If we're going to save the world, we need more people on our side." As the sun rose over the mountains, the three unlikely allies began planning their next move. knowing that with each passing hour, the deadly radiation wave drew closer to Earth. Professor Alan Craig was not what Jack had expected. Instead of the stern, white-haired scientist he had imagined, the man who greeted them in his university office was barely 50, with a friendly smile and casual clothes. His office walls were covered with Star Trek posters and framed scientific awards. "So, Olivia," Professor Craig said, gesturing for them to sit. "You said this was urgent and couldn't be discussed over the phone." Jack nervously adjusted his backpack where Zix was hiding. They had agreed that Olivia would start the conversation since the professor knew her. "Professor, what I'm about to tell you will sound crazy," Olivia began, her voice steady despite her obvious nervousness. "But we have proof." She opened her laptop and showed him the data they had collected at the cabin. The professor leaned forward, his casual manner giving way to intense focus as he studied the screen. "These radiation patterns are unlike anything I've ever seen," he said finally. "Where did you get this data?" "We built a special detector," Olivia explained. "Well, not really It was..." She looked at Jack. Jack took a deep breath and unzipped his backpack. "It's easier if we show you." Zix Toril climbed out onto the desk. Professor Craig jumped back in his chair, his eyes wide with shock. "Greetings, Professor Craig," Zix said calmly. "I am Zix Toril, nuclear physicist from the Centaurian Science Academy. Your planet faces an extinction-level event in less than 60 days. The professor stared silently for a long moment. Then he reached out a trembling hand toward Zix, stopping just short of touching him. "You're real," he whispered. "An actual extraterrestrial being." "Yes," Zix confirmed. "I have been in stasis on Earth for 25 years. Jack found me when he was a child. He was my toy," Jack added. "Or so I thought." Professor Craig looked between Jack and Olivia. "If this is some kind of prank..." "It's not," Olivia assured him. "The data is real. The radiation wave is real. And we need your help." For the next hour, they explained everything to the professor. Zix shared his detailed knowledge of the radiation wave and the shielding technology that could save Earth. By the end, Professor Craig was pacing his office, running his hands through his hair. "This is beyond anything in our current science," he admitted. "But the data doesn't lie. If this wave hits Earth unprotected, we're finished." "We need access to a nuclear facility," Jack explained. "Zix says we can modify the reactors to create a shield that will protect the entire planet." The professor laughed without humor. "You can't just walk into a nuclear power plant and start making changes. There are regulations, security protocols. Which is why we need your help," Olivia said. "You have connections in the scientific community. People trust you." Professor Craig sat down heavily in his chair. "Let me make a call." He picked up his phone and dialed a number. "Linda, it's Alan. Remember that favor you owe me? I need to meet with you today. It's about national security. No, I'm not joking. Yes, that urgent." After hanging up, he turned to them. "Linda Gray runs the North River nuclear plant about an hour from here. She's an old colleague and friend. If anyone will believe us, it's her." "Can we trust her?" Jack asked, concerned about Zix's safety. "We don't have a choice," the professor replied. "We need access to that plant." 2 hours later, they sat in Linda Gray's private office at the North River nuclear plant. The plant director was a practical woman in her 60s with short gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. After the initial shock of meeting Zix and reviewing their data, she had listened quietly to their explanation. "Even if I believed all this," she said finally, "which I'm not saying I do, the modifications you're suggesting would require shutting down the reactor. Do you know how many regulations that would violate?" "I understand your hesitation," Zix said, "but perhaps I can demonstrate the validity of my science." The small alien requested a notepad and pen. Using all 4 hands, he quickly sketched a complex diagram along with several equations. He pushed the notepad toward Linda. "This is a simple modification to your coolant system that would increase efficiency by 27% without any safety concerns," Zix explained. "You can verify the math yourself." Linda studied the diagram with growing amazement. This would actually work, she admitted. But it's completely different from our current understanding of nuclear physics. Consider it a small demonstration of my knowledge, Zix said. Now imagine what we could accomplish with access to your reactor's core systems. Linda looked at Professor Craig. Alan, if I help you with this and it turns out to be nothing, I'll lose my job. Possibly face criminal charges. And if we do nothing and this radiation wave hits, the professor countered, there won't be jobs to lose or charges to face. There won't be anyone left. A heavy silence filled the office. Finally, Linda sighed. I need to make some calls, she said. Wait here. When she left, Jack turned to the others. Is this really going to work? Are we actually going to modify a nuclear plant based on alien technology? Do you have a better idea? Olivia asked. Before Jack could answer, the office door burst open. Linda rushed back in, her face pale. Turn on the news, she said, grabbing a remote and pointing it at a small television in the corner of her office. The screen showed a news anchor looking grave. Scientists at NASA and other space agencies worldwide are reporting unusual solar activity and unexplained radiation surges approaching our solar system. Experts are divided on what this means, but some are suggesting these could be precursors to a larger astronomical event. It's starting, Zix said quietly. The initial waves are becoming detectable by your instruments. Linda turned off the television. I've called an emergency meeting of the plant's senior staff. If we're going to do this, we need to start now. Will they help us? Jack asked. They don't have a choice, Linda replied grimly. I'm invoking emergency protocols. As of now, this facility is operating under my direct authority. She turned to Zix. What exactly do you need to build this shield? Access to your reactor control systems, Zix replied, and materials to modify the neutron absorption rate. I will provide a detailed list. And this will protect the entire planet? Linda asked skeptically. No, Zix admitted. One facility is not enough. We will need to coordinate with nuclear plants worldwide. This is merely where we start. Jack looked at Olivia, Professor Craig, and Linda. Just days ago, they had been strangers. Now they were working together to save humanity. So we're really doing this, he asked. 57 days until the main wave arrives, Zix reminded them. We have no time to waste. Linda nodded decisively. Let's save the world. Over the next 3 weeks, North River Nuclear Plant became the center of the most important scientific project in human history. Linda Gray had convinced her superiors that the radiation threat was real, sharing the data, but carefully avoiding any mention of their alien advisor. Government officials visited, scientists were called in, and soon the plant was filled with people working around the clock. Jack found himself in a strange new role. As one of the few people who could directly communicate with Zix Toril, he became the bridge between the alien scientist and the human engineers implementing his designs. The containment field needs to operate at exactly this frequency, Jack explained to a team of nuclear engineers, pointing to Zix's specifications. He says even a small deviation could create dangerous instabilities. The lead engineer, Pete Nelson, shook his head in amazement. Whoever your anonymous consultant is, he's a genius. This technology is decades ahead of anything we've developed. Jack exchanged a knowing look with Olivia, who was working nearby. They still hadn't revealed Zix's true identity to most of the team. The small alien remained hidden in Jack's quarters at the facility, meeting only with their core group of trusted individuals. That evening, Jack returned to his temporary room exhausted. Zix was working on a small device he had constructed from spare parts. How's it going out there? The alien asked without looking up. The modifications to the main reactor are almost complete, Jack replied, collapsing into a chair. But Pete says it's not enough. Even with the North River plant converted, it only creates a shield that covers part of North America. We need more facilities. Yes, Zix agreed. We need at least 7 major nuclear installations worldwide to create a complete planetary shield. The government is working on it, Jack said. They've reached out to counterparts in Europe and Asia, but there's resistance. Not everyone believes the threat is real, even with the data we've provided. Zix put down his tools. The radiation wave grows stronger. Your scientists can detect it now, yes? Jack nodded. NASA confirmed unusual radiation levels approaching the outer planets. They're calling it an astronomical anomaly. People are starting to panic. Fear can be useful if it motivates action, Six observed. How many days remain? 31, Jack replied quietly. Just over a month. A knock on the door interrupted them. Jack quickly helped Zix hide before opening it. Olivia stood there, her face tense. We have a problem, she said. Government agents are here. They're asking questions about our consultant and how we developed this technology so quickly. Jack felt his stomach drop. Do they suspect? I don't know, Olivia admitted. But Professor Craig thinks they might want to take control of the project. Maybe even... She glanced toward where Zix was hiding. They might want to find the source of the information. We can't let that happen, Jack said firmly. Just then his phone rang. It was Linda Gray. Jack, I need you in the main control room, immediately. Bring your consultant's notes. Something's wrong with the reactor modifications. 10 minutes later, Jack stood in the control room, surrounded by worried engineers and government officials. The reactor's new systems were showing dangerous fluctuations. The containment field is collapsing, Pete explained, pointing to the readings. At this rate, we'll have to shut everything down and start over. We don't have time for that, Linda said grimly. The latest calculations show the radiation wave accelerating again. Jack studied the complex displays, wishing he understood more of the nuclear physics involved. I need to consult with my source, he said finally. Give me an hour. We don't have an hour, one of the government agents said. A tall man in a dark suit stepped forward. Mr. Harrison, I'm Agent Kevin White with Homeland Security. We need to know who developed this technology. Jack hesitated, looking at Linda and Olivia for guidance. The room grew quiet as everyone waited for his answer. Suddenly, the door opened and a small blue figure walked in. Zix Terrell stood in full view of everyone, his forearms held slightly away from his body in a non-threatening posture. I am the source, Zix announced, and we have no time for secrecy or bureaucracy if your planet is to survive. The room erupted, in chaos. Agents reached for weapons, engineers backed away in shock, and several people simply stared in disbelief. Silence, Linda shouted above the noise. This is still my facility, and right now we have a critical situation. I don't care if our help comes from another country or another planet. We need to fix the reactor now. Agent White recovered quickly. You've been harboring an extraterrestrial being? He's been helping us save humanity, Jack replied firmly. And right now, he's the only one who can fix what's wrong with the reactor. After a tense standoff, the agents reluctantly agreed to let Zix approach the control systems. The small alien quickly identified the problem. Your power grid cannot handle the energy requirements, he explained. We must reconfigure the intake systems or the entire shield will fail when the wave hits. For the next 12 hours, Zix worked openly with the human engineers, making modifications that would allow the reactor to draw enough power to maintain the shield. News of the aliens' presence spread rapidly through government channels, and by morning the facility was under military control. To Jack's surprise, this accelerated their progress. With the truth now public, governments worldwide began implementing Zix's designs at nuclear facilities across the globe. Video conferences connected Zix with scientists in Europe, Asia, and Australia, all working in coordination to create a planetary shield. 3 weeks later, Jack stood in the main control room, watching as the countdown reached its final hours. 7 nuclear facilities around the world had been modified according to Zix's specifications. The shield was active, but untested. The radiation wave will reach Earth's orbit in approximately 40 minutes, Zix announced, monitoring the readings. All systems are functioning within acceptable parameters. Olivia squeezed Jack's hand. Will it be enough? It has to be, Jack replied. As the wave approached, Zix suddenly turned to Jack with an unexpected request. There is one final component needed. The shield requires a living biological controller to make micro-adjustments during the wave's peak intensity. Who? Jack asked. Me, Zix said simply. I must connect directly to the reactor's control system. My species' natural bioelectric capabilities make me the only suitable candidate. Is it dangerous? Olivia asked. Zix hesitated. Yes, the process will likely consume all my remaining life energy. No, Jack protested. There must be another way. There is not, Zix replied. This was always my mission, to save your world. My delegation died so that I could complete this task. Before Jack could argue further, the alarms began blaring. The radiation wave had arrived early, already battering Earth's outer atmosphere. Without waiting for permission, Zix connected himself to the reactor's systems through a series of cables. It has been an honor to know you, the small alien said as his body began to glow with energy. Tell your people my story. The shield activated fully, creating a shimmering barrier in the upper atmosphere that spread across the planet. For 3 hours the radiation battered Earth, but the shield held. When it was over, Zix's small body lay motionless on the control panel. Jack gently picked up his childhood toy, his friend, who had traveled across the stars to save humanity. Zix's body was still warm, but the light in his eyes had faded. 1 month later, a small memorial stood on the grounds of the North River nuclear plant. It featured a blue, four-armed figure looking up at the stars. The plaque read simply, Zix Taral of Centauri. He came as a stranger and saved us all. Jack visited often, sometimes bringing his old childhood things to share with his friend. Scientists worldwide were still studying the technology Zix had brought them, advancing human knowledge by centuries. You know, Olivia said one evening as they sat by the memorial, in a way, he's still with us. Every nuclear plant on Earth now runs on his designs. Jack nodded, looking up at the stars that had been Zix's home. Not bad for an old toy, he said softly.